Oh, there we go. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Look, I would like to pick up on a couple of the points made by Ian Les-Galloway and the committee's deliberation on a couple of pertinent points that I think he is right to highlight. Firstly, Sir, in terms of the 0.05 to 0.08 and whether that should be a criminal offence or an offence essentially punishable with an infringement notice, there was some interesting reports provided to the committee. One particularly stuck in my mind, Sir, was from someone that had a number of drink driving convictions, Sir, and what was quite apparent from him and from his understanding of other friends and colleagues and so forth, the general perception out there, Sir, is that the penalty in itself was far less of a determiner on whether or not they made a decision to drink and drive. It was actually the likelihood of being caught and the fact that there would be a swift and certain consequence to that particular activity. And so what his strong view was that by lowering the limit to 0.05, that in actual fact it sent a message and it posed a very big question mark very quickly in the mind of the person who would drink and then go on to drive, that if they did, there was far more likely to be a consequence. And I think the important thing to note there, Sir, is that from someone who had committed a number of offences, and the penalties for drink driving are certainly not insignificant, certainly for repeat drink driving, that his view, Sir, was as soon as that limit came down, it changed the game altogether, because it wasn't a question of can I have a few and get away with it. It basically sent a message that drinking at all would likely result in a consequence, and the risks outweighed the reward in that sense, Sir. I think it was also important to note through that the police raised a very good point around the amount of time that officers are required to be tied up, essentially dealing with an excess breath alcohol that may go on to blood and what have you, Sir. And the process in itself can be anything from half an hour, it can take a number of hours, depending on actually whether the police officer's in a rural situation and how far through that process it actually goes through to a full arrest or like, Sir. So the ability for the police to be out on the road obviously gives them a greater deterrent impact. And what was clear from the conversations from police and other submitters during the passage of the submissions to the bill, Sir, was that the police are much more effective, not when they're sitting in a booze bus, but when they're actually out on the street providing a visual deterrence. And by having an infringement notice component to the legislation between 0.05 and 0.08, it actually speeds up the process significantly. And what was also clear is that it's not the fact that someone may get some hefty fine or even imprisonment, Sir, that was the great determiner. It was swiftness and certainty and the likelihood that there would be a consequence was far more of a determiner about the behaviours and activities. And actually, if we look across other areas of criminal offending, that is actually common across many other facets, not just with drink driving. The challenge, of course, that you're dealing with when you're talking about alcohol is you're talking about a mind-altering substance. So as soon as someone takes it, the very first part of their function, if you like, Sir, that's altered is their judgment, their ability to make judgments. So one thing is certain is that this legislation provides an opportunity to say, before you even start drinking, be aware that even a couple of beers or a couple of wines could put you in a position where there could be very likely be a consequence. A greater number of police able to be out on the street by virtue of the fact that they can turn over the notices much quicker, Sir, adds to that. Just in terms of very quickly in the point that the member made about the presumption of innocence around blood, what came through very clearly, Sir, and certainly in other jurisdictions, was when the consequence of the behaviour was or to the behaviour was insignificant in terms of it being a criminal offence or a fine, that it outweighed the need, Sir, for there to be an exceptionally high standard of evidentiary proof required at that point. Happy to leave it there, sir. It looks like you're reaching over for the bell or stretching your left arm, but either way.
I call Dennis O'Rourke.
Mr Chairman, New Zealand First supports tougher measures to curb the worst cases of drink